Codependence and Communication. Hey, I'm Cheryl Fidelman, the Conscious Codependence Coach, and today in this video I'm going to be talking about how in our codependent moments, oftentimes the communication with another person just doesn't work. And ultimately what's happening is the communication with ourselves is actually not working, because the root of any disconnect with another person starts with the disconnect within ourselves. So that's what I'll be chatting a little bit about today. It's also the topic of our next free and monthly Conscious Codependence class, where the Conscious Codependence community gets together, and that is the third Thursday of every month. And okay, please like or subscribe to my channel, and here we go. Codependence and communication. In our codependent moments, when we are in one or more of the three tenets of conscious codependence, the want to be wanted, the need to be needed, or the need to prove ourselves, it often seems as if the other person is not hearing us, or the other person doesn't understand us, or the other person is misinterpreting us. And so in our codependent moments, we're pointing to the other person as to what they're doing, what they're saying, how they're not hearing us, right? As opposed to sitting within ourselves and noticing, oh, I feel misunderstood, or I feel misinterpreted. I flip the camera around from pointing to the other person to helping us point to our own experience, because fundamentally, codependence is a dissociation of self. And so we disconnect from ourselves and we go, you're not safe, you're not trustworthy, as opposed to going, I don't feel safe. I don't feel like I trust right now. And so when it comes to codependence and communication, we are oftentimes trying to get somebody else to understand us. The first point of understanding is with ourselves, is actually understanding our own experience. And when we fully sit in our own experience, we can more understand, number one, how we are impacting somebody else's experience, how we are actually impacting their not understanding. And also, we can step back and notice the more we sit in our own experience, the less we may actually need that person to understand us. When we are more in our body, and there's a somatic element to my work where I help us heal our nervous system, regulate our nervous system so that we can have consistent inner peace and speak from a place of inner peace. Oftentimes what happens is when we are in a codependent moment and we get triggered into proving or defending, we are feeling so much, we're not connected to what we're feeling, and we think we're actually speaking clearly, but when we're not connected to what we're actually feeling and interpreting, we're not connected to the fact that we don't feel safe or we feel misunderstood or misinterpreted, oftentimes what we are saying is not actually clear. What we are saying is filled with a whole bunch of unsafety, potentially blame and projection, that we are not actually as clear as we think we are when we're talking, when we are not connected to what we are feeling. And so our disconnected, unfelt feelings are motivating what we are saying. And so the other person may feel a threat that we actually don't even know we're giving. When we speak from this kind of incongruence, our message is not coming across. Most importantly, our message is not coming across to ourselves because we are not communicating with ourselves. And in our codependent moments, we don't realize we're not communicating with ourselves. We don't realize we feel off kilter. We don't realize we're speaking from non-alignment. And so that will cause a disconnect in the communication with another person. And that's not to say that everybody else has a perfect interpretation and a perfect point of view, and we're the ones that are off. But it is to say that we can steer our own experience and be in the driver's seat of any conversation in any moment when we are in alignment with self. Okay? We can start to notice what message is not coming across. What are they saying that I'm misinterpreting, that I'm mishearing? What are they saying that's giving me a feeling of unsafety and untrust or confusion? And instead of speaking from those feelings, instead of speaking from a dysregulated nervous system, taking a pause, feeling what we're feeling, regulating ourselves, and then speaking from there. Oftentimes in communication, in our codependent moments, we don't want to take a pause to feel because we feel this addiction to dialogue, right? They say something, I say something. They have to say something, then I have to come up with the next thing to say. And so it becomes this like dialogue ping pong that we don't want to relax from or release from a moment because we don't want the other person to get mad at us, right? That's the future tripping piece of codependence. Well, if I don't answer right away, then they may get mad at me or think I'm ignoring them or rejecting them. Or if I take a break, then they might reject me and they might go away and go, you know what, forget it, right? And so oftentimes in our codependence, we get hooked into a communication that we can't get out of. And when the getting out of it is probably the best release of any given moment, where the getting out of it is actually us taking a break and going, this conversation and communication with you is not working. Let me get into communication with myself and see what comes from there. In the listening workshop, which is an 8-week group program, it's the flagship program of the conscious codependence process. It's based on my theory that perhaps all of our trauma can be found in the filters through which we listen to other people and most importantly to ourselves. We really dissect what the communication was like in your household growing up and how the listening or lack of listening or the communication or lack of communication is showing up in your communication style currently. Did you have to prove yourself and really defend yourself? Did you have to silence yourself in order to be heard and have some sense of belonging? Did you have to do work or jobs or chores in order to satisfy your sense of belonging? Did you have to leave yourself and understand other people more in your household and then find your experience after you found out their experience, right? So in our codependent moments, oftentimes we were trying to figure out what the other person is thinking and what the other person is feeling. And once we try to figure out that, then we find our place in the communication. Another piece of our codependence and communication in our codependent moments is we oftentimes lack the courage. Well, okay, I tried to talk about that thing. It didn't work. So let's just sweep it under the rug and pretend it's something I don't even need to talk about or address. And all those things get swept under the rug, put space between you and another person. And that space keeps growing because of the resistance to address certain conversations that you may have already addressed and it didn't work, or you may feel like if you bring it up, you're going to be punished. So either you brought it up or you never brought it up and you don't want to bring it up, right? But in the conscious codependence process, we are no longer silencing ourselves because we are managing somebody else's mood. The management of somebody else's mood is no longer in our hands. So in this process, we learn how to regulate our nervous system as we are listening, as we are communicating, staying in consistent connection with self, regardless of the conversation. So we can bring inner peace to any piece of communication, regardless of what that communication is. We notice the threats that we're feeling. We notice when we don't feel seen. We notice where we go when we don't feel seen. For a lot of us, our codependence shows up differently because the not feeling seen can trigger a different kind of trauma and bring up a different identity, right? Some of us may go into proving or defending when we don't feel seen. Some of us may go into silence or disconnection or isolation. There's different places where we go in different types of communication. And so in this workshop, we're really, really going to investigate where you go when you're listening, where you go when you're having particular conversations and particular communications, and that so that you can emerge as an independent, sovereign being in any kind of communication, so that you can be curious and you can bring back your innocence and you can bring back your actual understanding of what's happening with the other person, because your understanding of yourself and what's happening with you is there, because your relationship with yourself is where it all begins. So the next listening workshop begins next month. My New Year's discounts run through the end of this month. So if you're interested in jumping into my flagship program, please let me know. If you feel like now is your time, this is your year to bring your aligned, consistent, inner peace self to any relationship. Remember, your relationship with yourself is where it all begins. Happy healing, and life is now.